I call the meeting of the Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees to order. If you would stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C is recognition. We had intended to recognize the music students and staff, all the instrumental and vocal students, as well as instructors tonight. However, they are at another competition. So we will postpone that until next month. So there is no other recognition tonight. Mrs. West, if you would proceed with the roll call, please.
Mr. Reedy?
Here.
Mrs. Summers?
Here.
Mr. Mickelson?
Here.
Mr. Bottolo?
Here.
Mr. Jackman?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson?
Here.
Chairman Jellicoe?
Here. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reedy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, we do have an addendum, so I would entertain a motion to approve the addendum.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3, I would entertain a motion to suspend the board meeting and open the public hearing.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. So we are now in a public hearing to amend the 2021-2022 budget.
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent McGovern. The purpose of the public hearing tonight is to review the budget amendment before the board. The budget resolution encompasses 3 purposes. 1, the return of funds to WDE, receipt of funds from WDE, and reallocation of funds. 2, grant activity to support workforce stabilization. And 3, the new ESSER 2 SEA Reserve Fund Digital Learning and Virtual Education Grant. For the first purpose, you will see that the CARES ESSER Fund Grant and Zach, thank you. The CARES ESSER Fund Grant shows that we returned funds to WDE and the district received funds from WDE, and then those funds were reallocated. The second purpose of the budget hearing is to show the reclassification of the funds in 3 grants for workforce stabilization. These funds approximately total $1,595,530.67. The 3 grants that support the workforce stabilization includes CARES ESSER 1 in the total of $723,393.67. ESSER 3, which is $650,000, and the Carissa ESSER 2, $222,137. In the Carissa ESSER Fund, you will also see that the funds that were set aside for the health and safety incentive were swept to support workforce stabilization. The workforce stabilization will be paid out to staff on February 25th, 2022. Each staff member will be receiving a base of $1,000 plus an additional amount per year of service. As of today, the estimated amount that staff will receive on the for the per service is $97.48. However, this amount can change through February 22nd, 2022, and due to separation of employees from the district. The third purpose for tonight's budget hearing is that the district received an ESSER II SEA Reserve Fund Digital Learning and Virtual Education Grant for $103,390. These funds will support district virtual school by purchasing equipment for teachers and students to use in virtual classroom, such as guitars, digital cameras, tablets, digital fitness monitors, STEM kits. In addition, there is funds within this grant to support internet service and jetpacks for the virtual students. Finally, as part of the budget hearing and addendum, you will find an updated, itemized analysis of the ESSER funds, which is the spreadsheet that we have presented for multiple months. And this is available on the district website and will be kept up to date as we progress through using ESSER funds and receiving ESSER funds. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Doesn't look like it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any public comment with regard to the budget amendments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing and reconvene the board meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. All in favor of reconvening the board meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. We are now back into the regular board meeting. Item number 7, the superintendent reports. Tonight, we have the graduation rates and student performance.
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe and trustees. Zach, will you pull up our PowerPoint, please? Thank you. This evening, our presentation surrounds the 2021 graduation rates that were recently released by the Wyoming Department of Education. Wyoming continues to pride itself on setting high standards for all graduates. The overall state rates increased for the 8th year in a row. This is quite an accomplishment after recently I read that at least 20 states around the nation are reporting a decrease in graduation rates for the class of 2021. In slide number 1, Zach, our Sweetwater Strategic Plan, in partnership with all stakeholders, sets our standards high for all students and assures our dedication to providing a high-quality education that will empower and inspire our students to academic excellence. On slide 2, Zach, although our graduation rate dipped slightly from last year, the class of 2021 remained resilient despite the challenges faced from the pandemic. Students navigated through the incorporation of new technologies and faced unfamiliar challenges that they have never faced before. I've invited the high school administrators to share more information on each of the individual school graduation rates. Many of our students were also able to benefit from the general diploma, which they will share in their presentations as well. On slide 3, as you can see, the EL rates have been on the decline. Our English language director will be hiring a consultant to analyze and review current practices and supports for our EL population. Through a variety of grants, we will be increasing the number of EL teachers, purchasing material to support every student, and using feedback from the consultant to improve our program and all that we do. Our Special Services Director has contracted with Black Hills State Co-op to provide guidance and support on the instruction within the classroom for all of our IEP students. Her focus is on providing key instruction within the classroom, which will allow students to receive instruction with their peers and access grade level standards. As a district, next slide, Zach, thank you. As a district, many supports have been put in place to continue to work to increase student achievement. The general diploma is a viable option for any student who requests to benefit from this opportunity that you approved, and we appreciate that. Summer school and credit recovery is being offered by both during Friday school and during summer school. Sweetwater No. 1 Virtual School has provided an opportunity for almost 120 full or part-time students to attend school virtually. This has given many students the chance to catch up on credits that may have been missed last year, and 10 students will be graduating from the virtual program with the general diploma, as well as a few juniors who will be graduating early to pursue their nursing and welding careers. Professional development opportunities are in place for our staff for winter and spring academies, both for teachers and our classified staff. Last week, my department sent out a comprehensive list of more than 25 professional development opportunities in the areas of instructional strategies, literacy, integrating technology, and wellness. Interventionists have been hired to support students in every building. Social emotional supports are being funded through a variety of grants. College and career academies continue to provide a high-interest focus for students, as well as the opportunities for job shadowing and internships. We continue to work on implementing RTI, response to intervention strategies, in every building. Our federal grant coordinator has successfully secured funding to support district initiatives in areas that we need to focus on. One important area impacted by learning loss is the area of literacy. As we know, students who read on grade level, especially in third grade, is an important predictor of high school graduation rates. The Comprehensive State Literacy Development Grant is providing us the opportunity to pilot a K-12 intervention program that will support struggling students. It is also providing a mentor coaching and training program for our teachers. We will be able to purchase EL support materials, and we hope to secure additional funding through the Y-Built grant for the next 3 years. At this time, Mr. Supas will be sharing information on Rock Springs High School.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, Board of Trustees, thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss tonight our current graduation rate and where we're looking at for our future. So Zach, if you could go ahead and go to the first slide. You can see here that the graduation rate for Rock Springs High School for the 2021 school year, 73.1%. We saw a drop in the number of graduates from the year before. This is due to a lot of different reasons. We're still kind of looking into some of those reasons, but we have done a very careful analysis of our current senior year and our current seniors, so we can discuss a little bit more about that. So Zach, if you could please, next slide. All right, so let's talk about this year, the 22-23 projected graduation rate. Right now, based upon where students are at, these seniors projected to graduate next year is 79%. We had quite a few, there's quite a few indicators that we look at when we're looking at projected graduation rates. The biggest factor is, of course, the number of dropouts that we have through the 4 years that these students are in school. We take a look at their cohort group. So this next senior class, we took a look at all the kids that started with them as freshmen. And then we tracked them for 4 years to see where they're at, how they're doing, at what time, at what point did we happen to lose them? What point did we hopefully gain them back? And there are a lot of other factors that affect that as well. We did have quite a bit of students that left the community. And when they leave the community, it is up to their parents to go ahead and enroll them into another school. And then we get a request of records. And sometimes that does get lost. Sometimes we don't know if they've actually transferred to another school or not. Another big factor in our graduation rates is the number of placements that we have. We have quite a few of our students that are placed outside of the district for various reasons, whether it be through the legal system or through mental health reasons. We have quite a few kids that are put in placement. And we are currently examining what a transition plan would look like to be able to transition those kids when they come back to us from a placement. That's the number one indicator. We're kind of calling it the on-ramping. We need to on-ramp them back into the mainstream. And we're looking at several different opportunities that we can use to on-ramp these kids back into our system. But there are a lot of factors. It's amazing when you actually sit down and take a look. I was able to pull up every student, cross-reference it with the other, then take a look at where they're at, what they did they transfer to another district? And we had over 60 dropouts for this incoming senior class. That's a lot of kids when you're looking at 286, 287. That does affect us quite a bit. So even without looking at their entire senior year, this could be, that does affect us. But we have several different plans and different things that we'll discuss a few tonight. I'll be coming back to the board with the board's permission, come back to the board with a more comprehensive plan on what we're going to do to try to increase that 79% for this next year. The one good thing that we can visit about is we've almost doubled, if not tripled, the number of general diploma students for this year's senior class. That was through efforts of the entire administrative team at Rock Springs High School, the counselors, and the community. We're finding more and more students are looking towards that 18 credit program, and it's a good opportunity for our kids. So this has been a very good thing for us. Very good thing for us. It does allow for students to seek post-secondary employment. It allows for them to attend college early. And there's been some changes that, they can actually get a little bit of money through Hathaway now as well because of some changes in the legislation, even with an 18 credit. So we're very happy with the 18 credit. It gives opportunities, as you can see. 33 of those students are taking that opportunity right now. If that opportunity wasn't there, the dropout rate could be 93 students. And that's kind of the reality. Some of those kids, this was their hope. And we give them hope with the general diploma. Zach, if you could, next slide, please. So we've got all kinds of things that we're putting in place. One of the things that I won't insult your intelligence by reading each of these to you, but I do want to take a second and talk about our Friday school and our credit recovery program. This is something new we implemented through some of the ESSER funds, where every Friday when the staff is not in the school, Miss Downs, one of our assistant principals, she's been coordinating, and we've got teachers, high secondary teachers from the district. We're coordinating and we're bringing kids into school on Friday to do credit recovery. And we've recouped 23, I'm trying to remember. I didn't mean to put her on the spot, but we've recouped quite a few of these half credits to help these kids be able to be back on track to graduate. Friday school was huge this last Friday. We opened it up to freshmen. So one of the indicators that we look at is, freshman success. And we are working with freshmen right now. We have over 20 freshmen that are in the process of doing credit recovery on Fridays now as well. So we have quite a few kids, and it's been very successful. We hope to be able to continue this process. We hope to be able to continue offering Friday school for these kids. It gives them an opportunity to have a quiet place, get some work done, and we're having quite a bit of success with it. Our guided study with our interventionists has helped out tremendously. We're still doing the weekly eligibility checks. We're working with our Tiger Time, that new advocacy, enrichment, and remediation period that we put in place, not just for working on homework, but also to be working with our Habitudes program, the district-approved SEL program. We're doing that through our Tiger Time as well, trying to increase our student advocacy. One of the big changes that we're looking at is, and this is a slow process, but switching over to an evidence-based grading system, where we are going to be taking a look at students and how they can produce evidence that they have learned the standards that are required of them in each of the grade levels. I think that's going to help us out tremendously with our graduation rate. Because a lot of times the students, when you talk to students, the only reason they don't pass a class is they don't turn in the homework. So we're going to go ahead, and if we switch to an evidence-based, then hopefully the students will have an opportunity to demonstrate that knowledge without having to turn in a worksheet or having to do something that was required of them earlier. We're trying to figure out an early identification system. I took a look at the number of dropouts that we had with this next graduating class. And, there's some pretty startling figures. Looking at classes that they failed as freshmen, looking at the success rate of students who fail all 4 of their core classes their freshman year, they have a very low success rate. If we can't get them into summer school, if we can't get them the credit recovery that they need, quite a few of the students that dropped out, they dropped out because, and looking at the data, it looks like because they were credits behind and they failed English, math, science, and social studies. So we're working on that. We're trying to figure out what that early identification system is going to be and how we can incorporate it quicker. A lot of the stuff that we're looking at right now is strictly just Band-Aids. What we want to try to implement next year is going to be affecting our freshman class. That's our core group. These freshmen are going to be the future of our graduation rate. And we've got to figure out what systems, those early identification systems, that we can put in place to quickly identify those kids and get them the remediation that they need. So then that way we can show them success during their freshman year. Because one of the indicators for our school success is freshmen at the end of their freshman year have to have earned at least 6 credits. Those 6 credits mean that they are on track to graduate. So the more freshmen that I can get at the end of the year with 6 credits, that automatically improves our chances for a higher graduation rate. So with the support of Friday school, with the support of after school, with the support of summer school, with the support of interventionists, with the support of the additional personnel that are being advertised right now through these grants, we're bringing on almost 10 more people next year to strictly focus on our at-risk students. These kids are going to have an adult in their back pocket every day that they're at Rock Springs High School, and that's a good thing. They need that. So we're looking at what that early identification system is going to look like. We're going to look at how quickly we can implement it. And, we're going to try to identify those holes, try to identify that support quickly. We have the Career Technical Academy. I think that's going to help out. When I take a look at the number of dropouts that we had, if we could have given them an opportunity to learn a trade quickly, that could be that hook that keeps them in school. The continuation of clear systems and expectations for the safe and orderly operation of the school. That's a lot of big words for we're going to keep refining our routines, procedures, and expectations at the school. We're going to make sure that we have those in place so we can quickly identify students. We're looking at how we can modify summer school for credit recovery and then the continued PLC work. So we have lots of things on the table. And the team that is at Rock Springs High School right now, they're full of ideas. And there are so many different things that we could look at. But those are the plans. And like I said, I would ask to have the opportunity to come back in April to visit with the board about some of our plans for that 22-23 school year. I would ask the board to support us in some policy and procedural things that's your guys' job. We appreciate all that you do, and we hope to continue it. And we're also looking at how we're going to break the barriers. Schools have culture and tradition. And some of the culture and tradition needs to change with the changing of our students and the current way that we educate kids. So we need your support on that as well. When we come up with an idea that we want to early identify and we maybe want to pull them from an elective to be able to put them back into a core class so we can get that course, we need your support with those kind of efforts. We've got to change that culture, and we got to change the way we think. We get stuck in this mode. This is the way we do things, and we've always done these things, and it's always been that way. Well, we've got to change that because what we're doing isn't working. So that's the report. I hope next year I can be a little more positive and hopefully have a little better report. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
How's it going? My name is Bryant Blake. I'm the school principal at Blackvue High School. And I'd like to take this time to kind of talk about the successes at Blackvue High School. So let's go into the first slide. So as you can see, we made a significant jump. Last year for the 2019-20 school year, we had a 65.38% graduation rate, and we shot up about 22% to an 88.24% graduation rate. So it was a lot of celebration at our school, a lot of people excited with all the work we've done. Next slide, please. So what has led us to some of these great successes at Blackvue? Well, the first one I want to touch base on is our general diploma. Just like Mr. Supa said, there are some kids that we identified that if we didn't get them into an 18-credit diploma, they may not have made it. And it has given some of those kids that just, I don't want to be in school, given them that glimmer of hope, okay, I can do this, I can accomplish that. So we did have 6 students graduate that in 2020-21, and we anticipate 7 students graduating with the general diploma for 2022. Again, I'd like to kind of touch base on our attendance policy. Our attendance policy has actually been effective last year. We ended the year with a 90.4% attendance rate. So getting the kids in school, being present, and especially during last year where we had a lot of kids out because of COVID and those types of things, that we still had held a very high percentage. And then again, also with our attendance meetings, again, having those plans when we meet with parents to come up with a plan to help, how do we get your kid to school? How can we support them and make them successful in school? So go to the next slide. A couple other things that have led to success is one is our credit recapture. This is something that wasn't going on. And credit recapture is basically for those kids who failed a class first semester with like between a 50 and a 60% range. We would say, okay, let's come up with a plan the start of second semester. And what can you actually do? Meet with your teacher to show that you've learned some of these materials, and then we can get you at least to a passing grade. That has been successful. We had several kids that did fail first semester, a lot of our freshmen this year, and they did the credit recapture, and they were able to regain that capture, regain that credit. Another one we had is we did have a graduation coach last year, and the graduation coach was very, very influenced in getting those kids. The graduation coach, would work with those kids one-on-one. They'd go to your door. She would show up at your house. She would make sure you're at school, but also she would offer the academic support to make sure you're there, and also that there was somebody that cared about that student. Sometimes a little bit of tough love, but that's what some of those kids needed, and it got them over that. So that was one, and I'm excited with the jobs posted that we have a graduation coach possibly coming our way again for the next school year. So that's something we're very excited about. Also so new to this year. So some of the things, what are we implement? Oh, sorry, next slide. So what are some things that we're doing this year that we're hoping to have even a further impact? The biggest one, just like the high school, they have Tiger Time. We have DEN Time, which DEN stands for Deliberate Engagement Now. And we are actually moving students on a daily basis, except for Mondays. Mondays, we do like our social emotional learning with habitudes. And a lot of times we do some team building, class building activities for that. But on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we have a big flow chart of all kids just moving which way. We have our STEM time teachers that have a certain group of kids that is kind of their advocacy group. And they'll be reaching out to teachers. Okay, we need to get this kid in the math classroom. We need to get this kid here. And And then we've even brought in our AMP team on this. Our AMP team, we actually identify kids that we specifically have work with our interventionist. So we kind of use our interventionist kind of as a role of a little bit of a graduation coach there. So they're working with those students to try to get them going. I think I covered everything on there. But it's been really impressive. It's been a process that we started and we keep refining through our leadership team on how can we make this better, how can we tweak it a little bit, and how can we get kids moving. And I think kids are becoming less resistant. At first, they're like, what's the point of den time? But now I think kids at our school are they appreciate the den time. They appreciate having that support. And, sometimes it's like, you need to go here, but the kids are with that. The other thing is the guided study program. We started this last year, but we've actually tweaked it a little bit. So one of the things we've done at our school, we've actually created a guided study plan where kids are actually having to be reflected on their grades, find out what's your plan for the week. We really take that word guided to heart. We are guiding them. We're not just going to say, here, get your work done. I'm going to do some prep time. It's really, I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you. We're going to get what you need to do. And the kids have to submit a plan weekly, and that's part of their grade to do that. One of the other things we also did is we also assigned all freshmen to a guided study program to build in that support. And then we kind of look at kids at semester, okay, you're rocking it. You maybe don't need a guided study program. So we've kind of used that to help support those freshmen. The other thing is Friday School. We did partner with Rock Springs High School, and we have several of our Blackvue High School staff members that are actually helping support Friday School. And it has actually helped. We had I can speak of one girl right now was at risk of not graduating, but through the Friday School, she has recovered 3 classes and is currently working on 2 more. And her goal is to be graduating at the end of this year. So that's a big success story with there. We also are joining with forces with the high school, with the freshmen. And I think the approach we've taken versus, doing it virtual to actually doing some hands-on stuff activities is going to be really beneficial to our freshmen, because sometimes plunking a freshman in front of a computer, that's not going to lead to a lot of success. So I've heard great things about that. And let's go to the next slide. And we did so it was a big deal for Blackvue. We had a generous donation, and we were actually threw a big celebration, and we got some pizzas. And I've never seen that many pizzas in the back of my car in my entire life. And we've got some pizzas. We got some little, I can't remember, little cups, Italian ices and sodas, and the kids had a good time. We blew up balloons, and then of course we popped them all, and it was really loud, but the kids really enjoyed that portion. And then next slide. But last but not least, we've done all these things, but the most important people are the people on that screen. Those are my staff at Blackvue High School, because none of this would not be possible without their dedication, their hard work, and always being there for every single kid, no matter what, and they never give up on a kid. And I just want to say, I do have 3 staff members that are here, so I just want to give them a shout out over there. But it's really because of the work of them that made this possible. Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. McGovern, Chair Jellicoe, members of the board. Zach, can you go to the first slide? I am pleased to stand before the board and report that Varston Eden has again attained a 100% graduation rate for the 2020-21 school year. Can you go to the next slide, please? In the 2021 school year, we graduated 18 senior students, each with a standard 28 credit diploma. For the 2021 school year, we have 12 students that are currently on track to graduate next year. We've been using our IXL. We have a school interventionist. Thank you all for supporting that position. And she's working very hard with all of our students K-12 to fill in gaps that we noted from the COVID pandemic. Our data teams continue to monitor student progress, and we assign remediation groups during the end of the day academic options period, and our student advocacy groups establish strong supportive student relationships. Here, our students also participate in weekly social emotional learning activities, again, as mentioned, through our Habitudes program.
So as you can tell, we are striving to provide all that we can to make sure that our graduation rates continue to improve. And we hope that this year we see an improvement. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer.
Questions, comments? Mrs. Summers?
Madam Chair. Oh, there we go. I just want to commend you all for the steps you're taking to improve graduation rates. And I guess my question probably pertains more to Mr. Supis, but also, so I was just wondering, because I know that, you were talking about with freshmen, there are indicators that, you're losing them as freshmen, but we also know that we tend to lose them earlier than that. So are you working with the junior high, collaborating with them as you develop your plans to improve graduation rates? Is there like a district, are you collaborating, I guess, vertically with them as well?
Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern. Yes. Thank you, Trustee Summers, for that question. That's an excellent question. We've started the collaboration piece, the vertical collaboration piece with our Career Technical Academy. We're really trying to pilot that, getting eighth graders interested in actually signing eighth graders into our academy. We think that that could be a good step, but that's still only going to affect out of the incoming 400 plus eighth graders that'll be coming up next year. That's not going to affect all of them. So the conversation does have to deepen a little bit on what we can do to support. We know that this junior high does have certain structures put in place with their scheduling, so that way students can get that everyday math and English support that they need. The team and I have been looking at different scheduling options where we could try to maybe implement something like that, not for next year, but as we move forward, what that might look like to see if we can at least mimic some of that for our freshmen. We've also been taking a look at what that curricular piece looks like. I think it's the biggest conversation that's taking place is the discussion of that evidence-based grading system. And the junior highs and Principal Kundal and myself, we've been talking about how that's going to look and when we're going to get together and start hammering those specifics out. But that consistency, that continuity of expectations for students to demonstrate their proficiency on the standards, I think is going to help as well. And I think that ultimately, you're right. It hits at the junior high. The more we can affect the junior high, the better off we're going to be. But at the high school level, I need to hook them. I need to hook them with what they're interested in and then build off of that hook. So there's lots of ideas. Again, we're tossing around a lot of different ideas, looking at the data to see what that would look like and what it would support. So that's part of the other reason why I want to come back in April is to be able to share some of those ideas because we'll have taken a look at the data to see what we could do differently. But that's an excellent question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supis.
Other questions? Mr. Batolo?
Madam Chair, I also want to thank everybody for how hard they're working on this issue. Sometimes it sounds negative when you ask for more, but I think that there isn't a single person in this room, except for maybe Mrs. Rosanico, and I'm smiling, that wouldn't want their graduation rate to be higher. Is that fair to say? I mean, that's absolutely what we want to do. I will eventually tonight make a motion that we support the graduation rate through the Board of Education. Many of you know that this is a particular passion for me. And one of the places that I would like us to take a look at, I've talked about this place before. I've never made a motion for us to do that, to see what the opinions of the other board members are, but there's a facility called the National Center for School Engagement. And Mr. Blake, when you said the word engagement, I just about jumped out of the chair and ran over and high-fived you, because I happen to believe that when students are in a school where they feel like they're a part of the school, they don't leave. I see some heads nodding, and I thank you for that. What I also know is when our rules match what I would call a more modern look at discipline, that we don't end up disciplining kids out of school, that we support them through situations, that we have a lot more success. The other thing I would tell you is that in my research, I looked at a self-assessment. Actually, it's a school-based assessment. that we could use through this same center that costs $75. Not $75 a test, $75, period, which will give us information about how we're doing in engagement, issues with engagement, issues around the whole idea of how safe and included students feel. So I don't know if it's appropriate for me to make that motion now or if I should wait, but the motion I would like to make is to have us become involved in an organization that's bigger than we are, that has done this on a national level and can give us maybe some resources, ideas that could help us solve this problem. It's tremendously hard to be Mr. Suppis right now because he's got the biggest school. Every school does a great job. Thank you, Blackvue, for being here. You wonder about engagement. There's the engagement. They're sitting right there. That's exactly why what's happening is happening at that school, because everybody's on the same team and everybody's pulling in the same direction. I would ask my fellow board members to support a motion that would allow us to have a relationship with the National Center for School Engagement and to follow up with some of the strategies and opportunities that they have for us to be able to increase our graduation rate.
I'm going to ask Mr. Bartolo to repeat that motion at the conclusion of this discussion, and then we'll proceed with that. Okay? If you're agreeable to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? Further questions or comments? Mr. Jackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Supis, Mr. Blake, this is for you. Ms. Marzanico, I expect a mic drop at some point. But so you mentioned our policies and everything. I was curious if our recent attendance policy kept any students from graduating.
Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern. Thank you, Mr. Jackman. That's an excellent question. When looking at attendance rates at Rock Springs High School, it varies. It really does. And I think it goes back to that we need to change the culture and establish the routines, procedures, and expectations that follow it. Our attendance rate, and I didn't pull it, I didn't even think about it, but I can provide that. We did see an increase in our attendance when we went to the 4-day, or when we went to the block schedule. I remember that. From the traditional 7-hour day, we did see an increase in that. But the conversations that we're having in regards to attendance are very different conversations, because we discuss at the high school, we discuss with them the fact that they're missing class, but there's always something a little deeper. There's something a little more systemic with it. And there are resources that we don't have to be able to address some of those systemic things. We have meetings all the time, and the discussion is, well, is there something differently we can do? I can tell you that a lot of the conversations that we've had this year around attendance meetings has also come back around to the support and help from the virtual high school. The virtual high school has given us those opportunities where if we have a young person that is not attending school because of XYZ, helping family, doing this, having illness, etc., I can then very quickly get a hold of Ms. Gardner and Ms. Veras and say, we have a young person. If we get them in these classes virtually, if we give them the support that we need, we can go ahead and save them and keep them on track to graduate. So that's been the biggest help with the attendance meetings. But I would have to look at the data a little bit more to be able to figure it out. I do know that some of the dropouts, when I was looking at their past, looking at about the time when they dropped out or when they decided they would go get their high set, when they were looking at some of those, you can look at their attendance records, and attendance played a factor in it. Absolutely. So we've got to figure out that engagement piece. We've got to figure out that instructional piece. And then we've got to figure out this kind of supports that we can provide at Rock Springs High School to be able to fix some of those systemic things. So great question. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Blake.
So I would, there we go. That's a little bit better for me. I feel like a hunchback over here. So at Blackvue, we've never had a student that lost credit due to the attendance policy. We've actually had sometimes where a kid would push it to the 5. When you get 5, that's when you got to have a meeting. A lot of times when we finally had that 5-day meeting with it, you've hit 5 unexcused absences, that kind of stopped it in its track. And then you'd see the students' attendance actually, where if I felt there was never that 5-day meeting, we didn't have that plan, that kid would have just continued on that same path and not showing up. We did have a couple kids that lost credit, but when they lose the credit, they still have that time. Okay, now you got to start showing up. You got to improve your grades, not your grades. Yeah, your grades. And then once they do that, they can petition to get that credit back. And every kid that has actually petitioned to get their credit back at Blackvue High School, we take a comprehensive look of how are your grades, how has your attendance been, and we've granted the credit back every single time for those students that showed up. So I think without the policy, I think some of those kids would have just kept going the path they would have. And I think the meetings kind of stopped it in its tracks. So
Thank you. I do have one final question.
Please.
And this is probably for Ms. Gardner and Ms. McGovern. Mr. Supas mentioned standards-based grading. Is this going to be a high school strictly thing, or is it district grade wide?
Mr. Blake. Thank you. So K through 6 has been doing standards-based grading for 10 or 15 years, I've heard, here in our district. But this is a project that the CCC has been recommending for several years, that the junior high and the high school also work toward evidence-based grading, personalized mastery, standards-based grading, whatever you would like to call it. And so this year, under the guidance of and leadership of Mr. Supas, the high school is moving in the direction of that, along with Mrs. Kendall. And so we are super excited. They've been doing a book study with the CCC and I think the high school leadership team about working toward that and overcoming the challenges that that brings with it. And so tomorrow, actually Wednesday, in our leadership meeting, they'll be working with our CLI consultant and a leader from Iowa, I think, who has done this, faced the challenges of the implementation in the secondary grade levels and overcome them. And so we're super excited that they are actually moving in the direction of that. So Superintendent McGovern, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
No, Jody, thank you so much for that. Are we on now, Zach? How's now? It's showing on.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things to add about our graduation rate. I think, first of all, the challenges that we face as a district overall, you know, specifically for Rock Springs High School as well. All of our schools are getting additional support and certified staff for next year. But we couldn't have done this without the effort of the American Rescue Plan funds that are coming in. Because truly, this is the first year that we've been on the other side of budget and financial crunches. Just look at last spring where we had to reconfigure 2 different schools. But for example, for Rock Springs High School for next year, we have support for 4 interventionists for the school, more resource room teachers for our students that are served on IEPs, 2 more counselors for Rock Springs High School, just support, not only with schedules, but for social and emotional, really meeting the needs of those kids. 1 more EL teacher and 3 more graduation coaches for the school. And so, and we have that support ready to go for our other buildings as well, including our full-time subs, 1 for each one of the schools. So hopefully that'll help out with coverage in the rooms. But specifically for the high school being our biggest building with over 1,400 kids in there, the support is greatly needed. I think the other part as well is how important it is to support education funding, and where that originates from the state level, how it flows through for our foundation guarantee, our block grant as well, and how investing in education reaps dividends, not only to keep people here within our state, but also to get our graduates and our kids involved. On a district level, just very quickly, one of the things we did earlier this year was the parent involvement for student achievement. We did a task force for that. That was the PISA task force that many of our parents were involved with, and also some of our trustees as well. And ironically, when I look back at what the goals are for that task force, the first was to build relationships with our parents and our community. And this was a small group focused mainly of our parents, and they picked up on that right away, building relationships with our community. The second is the standards-based grading that Mrs. Gardner was referring to. And that was specifically to define priority standards and teach all students to mastery. And the third was to embed purposely planned relationship building in our schools and our classroom. And we look at the buildings that really have that high engagement. It's the student advocacy pieces. It's doing whatever it takes to support kids to make them be successful. And it's that whole shift in mentality of that the student blew it and they don't have any more choices. But it's about what do we do next? They didn't make it that first time yet. So what do we do the next time? What do we do the next time? And so really building upon those goals as well. And then also one final piece is addressing some of the challenges that we do have here in Sweetwater 1. And we know our district is the second highest district for English language learners within the state. And I believe our first is Jackson Hole, Teton County. And then the second is Sweetwater #1. So really embracing the needs of our kids. We know we definitely have those on there, but supporting them so that they can have as much success as possible with the students that we serve. And also with our special education, our identification rate for our kids, we are at 20% for special education students here within the district. So 1 in 5 receives some type of support for special services. And so we want to embrace that, and we have a good plan, I believe, but we could not do that without those grant funds and putting that into place. Our virtual school is funded through the American Rescue Plan funds. So we're doing a good plan. It's strategic to maximize those grant funds on there. But I also want to mention to everyone how important it is that we have those funds, because without it, we wouldn't be able to put those into place. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Mickelson.
Thank you. So I feel like I might be slightly aberrant in, not that I'm not concerned, but graduation rates are just a data point. And I'm always excited to see the 5-year and 6-year graduations, because that speaks to the persistence of the students and of the staff to make that happen. When the data was released by the WDE, the thing that really leapt out to me is that we're really losing our boys at some point. I mean, that was a huge, and that was a big difference between us and other districts. And then my perennial comment of, this stuff really looks amazing and I'm super excited about it. But every time I see this much focus on our kids who are struggling, I always go back to, and what are we doing for those kids who are really ahead, right? But I do want to say, Mrs. Rosanico, it's really easy because we just have this expectation that Farson will be 100% every year. But I know that there's a lot of work that goes into it. And regardless of the fact that you're a smaller school, the amount of attention and effort that is put into making sure that those kids all graduate is really laudable. Mr. Blake, I don't remember what committee thing I was here for, but it was parents and students and faculty and a whole bunch of people. And one of your young ladies was here. And the way she spoke about the den time and how powerful that was to her and what a difference that made for her and her peers was really pretty special. I mean, it was impressive. And then Mr. Supis, I know, the high school always gets the sort of the black eye when we address this, but when you have your sophomore and JV basketball players being the only team in 32 years that have helped a janitor put away chairs and tables and clean up without being asked, really good things are happening there, which is why I get frustrated with graduation rates, because it doesn't speak to who our kids are as a whole. And so I really appreciate the work that's going on and the things that are happening. And I know it's a big lift and kids are not okay. And so to try to help them and get them through so that they can go on and live their lives and be successful is a huge task and very praiseworthy. So thank you.
Other questions or comments? I have a couple. First of all, you talked about credit recovery, and my understanding is the minimum credit is like a half credit at this point. Is that accurate?
Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, yes. Every semester is a half a credit.
Credit, right.
And there are 24 credits to graduate, and then the general diploma has 18.
So my question is, if, and you mentioned some policies might be coming forward, and I may be jumping the gun here or something, but would it be helpful if credit recovery could be done in quarter and reduce that half credit down to quarter credits? Is that something that might help?
That's an excellent question, because that is the ultimate debate. I mean, if we go and break down to the 0.25 credit, or offering a quarter credit for every quarter that the student is there, yes, they can see progress and gains as they're moving along. That is definitely one side. The other side, of course, is, and this is one of those building level things that needs to be discussed, because currently we do credit systems a quarter per quarter, but we do not offer quarter credit. We still offer that semester credit at the end. So what happens is a student like Little Glenn has a terrible first semester of his freshman year. And during that first quarter, he is not successful. The quarter system was put in place so that Little Glenn would get a fresh start at the second quarter, but then the process was to average the two together. So when you have an F and an A, and that's worth, you average those two together, and that's 80%, and then you throw in 20% for semester final. The law of averages could help Little Glenn earn that half credit, but sometimes it doesn't. So I really think that if we were to switch to offering the quarter, that could help. But the other side of it is then we have to look at restructuring our classes, because then so Little Glenn earns only a quarter credit in freshman English. So he is back into freshman English first quarter, the quarter credit he did not earn. But what happens when second quarter comes around? So it'd be almost like building a separate schedule for each one of the quarters to accommodate those students that move if we were to do a quarter system. The quarter system works great for some of our institutions, some of our alternative placement, like the school that is working with Wyoming Boys School. They offer quarter credit, and that gives them that opportunity. But boy, is it hard when they come back and we try to evaluate their credits to try to figure out how we can get them that other 0.25 credit that they need because they weren't there for a whole year. So there are some obstacles if we were to go to that 0.25 every quarter. That would be difficult, but it could be done, and it's one of the options that we are looking at currently to see if that would fit what we need or not.
Okay, and I guess my thought was it might help with motivation if kids see that, well, I did get that quarter credit, and like I said, and now I can move forward with the next credit or so on. So thank you for that information. I get my second comment is I'd like to take the two small schools that we have and the apparent connectedness that kids have in those settings. And how do we get that in a school of 1,400? And I think that it sounds like some of the additional staff that we're putting in there, the graduation coaches, the interventionists, and some of those. And I think, Mr. Supas, you said something about some of the kids, or maybe it was Mr. Blake that said the kid's going to have an adult in their hip pocket. So, it's just that attention to each individual student and helping them to realize that they do matter, that they are important, and that we're committed to their success. And I just want to assure, and I don't think there's a board member up here that would say anything different, but we are committed as a board to offer you whatever help you need, whether it be policy, funding where we can. These grant funds have come at an opportune time, and we're trying to maximize that and stretch it out as far as we can, because we can't just do it for a year or two and then not have. The other thing is that, as Mrs. McGovern said, the legislature is, they see that we have all this money and that we really need the state funding and attending, and I'll bring some of that up a little bit later in the meeting. But they need to understand that education costs. And, I was listening to the news not too long ago when in Utah, half of their state budget is education. And all we hear from our legislators here is, well, half the state budget is education. Well, you think? I mean, that's our next generation. That's our tomorrows. And what better place to put our money for it than in education in our kids. So thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for the presentation. Okay, going back to Mr. Batolo. Would you like to repeat that motion?
I probably don't want to repeat all of it, but I guess
Okay.
what I want to say is that I am moving that we have a board work session, as Mr. Suppa said, before March or at the March meeting, where we ask our staff, our administrative and school staff, and any community members that would like to come help with the problem, to have a conversation specifically about what we can do systematically to have our kids engaged in our schools. What could we do to allow students of all ability levels to be more successful in our schools? How can that allow us to take a look at where our kids are failing and to plan interventions? Now, I know that that's just a beginning of that process that would probably last for the rest of our lives. But I really want to encourage us to take this on as almost, if you, for lack of another word, public enemy number one, our highest priority except safety.
So if I'm hearing the motion, okay, it is to, I think you mentioned a center. Is that part of the motion as well?
I think for me, John Batolo, I would bring information about the National Center for School Engagement. I would bring information about everyone graduates, Robert Balfans. I would bring other resources that I've seen and watched be successful. I think we would bring the data from the PISA group into that room and talk about what our community told us. I think there are people, school principals, there are cabinet members that have ideas about things that we could do to help our kids stay in school, opportunities for them to do better in school, and also evaluate where the gaps are.
So this is a workshop
Yes,
prior to the March meeting,
yes,
okay,
Please.
to take a look at how we can basically help our students become more successful.
exactly.
Okay, is there a second
Second?
for the motion? Mr. Jackman?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Jackman is a second. Further discussion? Further discussion? Mr. Mickelson?
I think it's a good idea for us to offer that opportunity. I'm just wondering about the timeline and if that's realistic for the district and the administration team to have that in place so quickly, or if that, I mean, because this is a long-term issue. And so if it would be more feasible to do something like that in the summer, once we're through sort of all the educational stuff that has to happen during the year, or maybe it is feasible. I don't know. I was just curious. Thank you.
Mr. Supas, you said that you were going to further presentation in April. Would any of this be helpful to you then? How do you see that being helpful to, and I shouldn't single you out, but, you know, do you see that this would be helpful as a board if we look to find out what we can do? I checked out the website on the center as well. And for $75, we can get a questionnaire that could help us identify some things. And clearly there's been a lot of thought put into a lot of things that are going on already. And maybe this will just reinforce some of those ideas and maybe generate some others as well.
Superintendent McGovern, Chair Jellicoe, if I may. Yes, I set April aside because I wanted to continue to look at the data to see what specifics I can find out and to be able to do the research on the data to support what initiative or what we may look at doing things differently. That's why April was set aside as a possibility. The board looking into whatever the board looks into, that's at the will of the board, and the information that could come out of it could be very beneficial, and it could help us in some of that planning. The hard part's going to be once we have it in March, I would ask for a little bit of time to take that information and then see how I can, if it is beneficial to the plans that we're thinking about in April or not. So it would be hard for me to say right now specifically how beneficial, but I have looked at the website as well. I have looked at some of the stuff that they do provide. There are some great strategies, some great things. I think that there has to be a careful look to ensure that it's a right fit for our district and it's a right fit for our students. But I think there are some things that could benefit from the board possibly exploring those options and looking at those things. It would just be, I would ask that there not be too much of an expectation for me to take that data and quickly apply it for a presentation in April, because I don't know if I can get it done by then. That's a pretty busy time. We're getting ready to try to get every senior to graduate in May. You know, we've got a few.
That's the priority.
But I think that, and I can also understand where Trustee Mickelson was coming from about, you know, waiting to the summer to see if we can have some of that. So there are some opportunities with it. I would love to, you know, have the time during the summer to break that down, because then I will have incoming 8th grade data to be able to support to see if those are the right decisions that we need to make as well. So
Trustee
Madam Chair.
Mr. Patolo.
I misunderstood. I thought he talked about doing this in March. I would defer to his timeline to be able to have this conversation. And Mr. Suppes, if it makes more sense for you to bring data to us first and then to have a meeting in May, or for that matter in June, I just want to make a commitment as a board to this as an issue. That's what I want more than anything. It doesn't have to be tomorrow, although, you know, my passion tells me I want it to be tomorrow. If we can commit to doing that this summer and taking a look at things as simple as, why did the kids that didn't graduate last year not graduate? Just to have that data and say, here's the commonalities. They struggled in this class. Mr. Suppes said to me that he supposed in one conversation that there were specific science classes that were getting in the way. That's different than what the national data shows, but that may be something that we can use to help our people be more successful. So I would amend my motion to say that when the time is right to have the conversation as a group in a work session about graduation.
Mr. Jackman is the second. Do you agree with that motion? Okay, so the motion is more than likely, I'm going to say, because May gets so hectic with everything, that probably in June, after the April presentation, that we will have a workshop to discuss some things and try to find some things that the board can do to help support the work that these principals and their staffs are doing in their schools to help our kids become more successful.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman.
when does our Y-top data, that spring tests, become available?
Oh, that's not usually till September, isn't it?
Okay,
September, early October.
okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. No, I was just
Yeah.
curious because if it came available in July, it wouldn't.
No,
yeah,
it's usually after school starts, so I want to say September or October.
Thank you.
And that's if it's not delayed. Okay, any other comments or discussion? Okay, I think we have the motion down, so I think we're probably looking at a June meeting. And maybe things will slow down a little bit by then and we can spend some time on this because I think it is a priority for all of us. We want to do whatever we can do as a board to help support what's going on in our schools. And again, take that maybe that small school mentality or culture and then transfer it to a school of 1,400 kids and get them to feel that connectedness. It's apparent in Farson and Blackvue. So, okay, the motion, everybody clear on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much for that information. Number 8, the communications and correspondence or public comment. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district's website. As per policies B, D, D, H, and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. If your comments have been previously submitted in writing, please refrain from addressing the board a second time. Policies B, D, D, H, and KD continue to state questions asked by the public shall, when possible, be answered immediately by the chairman or referred to staff members present for reply. Questions requiring investigation shall be referred to the board or administrative staff for consideration and later response. So I will start off by saying we have no written public comment tonight. So I will open the floor to anyone with public comment. Please state your name and come to the podium and state your name, please.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Harper. Good evening, Chairman, Board, and Superintendent, and attendees. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm Kevin Harper, speaking as a member of Sweetwater Education Association. SEA is announcing their intent to initiate negotiations with the board. Written request will be in your inbox dated February 16th in accordance with contract negotiation procedure.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Glenn Supis, principal of Rock Springs High School. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention and to the community's attention that this Wednesday we start our Make-A-Wish campaign at Rock Springs High School. It is always a wonderful effort to beat Green River. I mean, to raise money to support. I'm sorry. It's about the kids. The Make-A-Wish program is an outstanding opportunity for us to help young people in their time of need. And I would ask that the community, if you would like to participate in the Make-A-Wish, all you have to do is call Rock Springs High School, and we will get you in touch with who you need to visit with to make that happen. But we are super excited about this year's events. I know that the central office is supporting those efforts with several different activities as well, but you can never pass up a free opportunity for some free press. So again, thank you for your support of Make-A-Wish, and go Tigers.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Marty Albert. I teach first grade at Sage, and as always, I represent myself. However, I would not be bringing this comment if it wasn't frequently discussed in the hallways at school. So I realized that we are exactly halfway between the beginning of this school year and the beginning of next school year. And we have a 4-day week. And for the most part, we love it. Teachers are not, they're actually getting a weekend. We have some time to work on those off Fridays and the Fridays that are work Fridays. But there's a problem at the elementary level. To shorten the week and shorten the days simultaneously was quite a hit to us. We lost a half hour of time, and moving breakfast into our classrooms while we say we can teach during that time. When you have 75% plus of your class eating breakfast, we do our best and we try to teach, but the truth is in a first grade classroom on waffle day, it's pretty hard to get attention, which ends up being 50 minutes shorter than we had last year when we had a 5-day week. And that has been a challenge. And one of the results has been that today on Valentine's Day, we did not have a party, which meant that the teachers got to field a week full of angry parents complaining that we were choosing not to have a party. And that wasn't fun because that wasn't our choice. It wasn't our decision. So I would like my half hour back. And I know there are a lot of moving pieces. There's transportation. There's different schools that have to have needs met. I would like my half hour back with my whole class, not with a small group after school. I have kids I need to teach, and I need to have time with them. I would really like it. If it had my druthers, we would go 8 to 3:30 or even 4. I don't need to be at school from 3 to 4:15 without my whole class. I would like them there. I think by giving that time back at the elementary level, it will relieve the pressure of go, 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 go all the time with standards and worrying about kids that can't go, go, go as fast as we need to go. I think it would also give our resource teachers who have done some scrambling this year that time back to fulfill their IEP minutes. Cutting that time for them was tough. It was tough for them. If we could even get that half hour back, that's 2 hours a week. And it doesn't sound like much, but it's really significant. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Further public comment?
I'm Nate Woolman. Thank you, board, for leading this meeting. I just had a couple questions. We were talking about the interventionists and how we're able to have those interventionists in the district as of now. I was wondering, is that directly related to this Americans Emergency Funding? And will that eventually go away? And is that something that we are going to be looking at altering and putting in our budget? I know that might be like a hard question to answer right now, but I do see the benefits of having these interventionists. So I just wanted to pose that
Do you want to
question.
address that? Superintendent McGovern, would you address that?
Sure, Madam Chair. Thank you for the great question. When we went into the American Rescue Plan, you have to be real careful with the personnel side, so I appreciate your question. We wanted to use that twofold. The first is the teacher shortage, not just what we experience here for Sweetwater 1, but it's on the news constantly about the national teacher shortage. There's a principal shortage, there's a superintendent shortage. I mean, just education overall is really, really losing a lot of quality people as well. So when I look at Sweetwater 1, we had 28 long-term subs for this current school year, and those were certified teaching positions that we simply were unable to fill. And so we closed, I believe, 3 of the positions and then put 25 long-term subs in there, and they have done a wonderful job. They've worked very hard to help us in this situation, and they do excellent work. So I think that's important to say. But So that's one of the dilemmas that we have to work through. The other part with the ARP funds, the grant funds, is when we wrote the plans before the board to consider, we wanted it to be a recruiting pipeline for us as well. So we always have to be careful because you don't want to offer positions and then lay those people off the next year. So the way that we strategized for that was, one, they would fill the needs for our EL and our SPED and interventionists overall. But also with the idea that we would be very open about what those positions were, that they were grant funded, and then through that course, so if they were with us that first year, if there was a position, perhaps a regular position, a certified position that they were qualified to do, that we would encourage anyone that had the qualities and certifications to apply for those. So if we had to adjust the number of interventions in the next few years going through, because you don't want to go out there if you can't sustain it. So we tried to keep that in mind as well, but balance this teacher shortage, education shortage that we're working through as well for the district. And that same kind of philosophy went through with the virtual school with that. And there becomes a point in the virtual school where you need to have enough students so that it self-sustains, so it keeps on going. So when those grant funds run out, that we're able to make those things work. So that's really our game plan in going into all of those, because I've seen the district and I've had to work through and clean up that idea that if you hire too much, then people lose positions. And that definitely is not a route we want to go.
Thank you. I had another comment. Thank you for your effort with first graders. I have a first grade girl that Valentine's Day is an important day for her, and so I'm sure that you fielded a lot of ill behavior, but thank you for doing that. We appreciate, as a parent, that you would consider the fact that their education comes first. So thank you for that. But on top of that, I just wanted to make a comment when we're talking about graduation rates with Blackvue, seeing their amazing numbers, and Farson, Eden High School with their numbers. I know personally that you don't typically remember the teachers that didn't care, that were collecting a paycheck. You remember the teachers that actually put a lot of effort in and were passionate, like yourself. And I just think that might be part of the success over at Blackvue, just that there are a lot of passionate people over there, and that goes a distance. So, and then, yeah, so thank you, and thank you, board.
Thank you. Further public comment? Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll go on to item number 9, the treasurer's report. Mr. Jackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the general fund for the month of January 2022, total starting balance $21,495,934.62, ending balance of $26,482,173.70. The school lunch program beginning up with $1,317,084.85 and finishing with $993,843.60. And the Head Start program started with $90,017.55 and finished with $88,305.62. And that concludes the treasurer's report.
I entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reedy. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to item number 10, the warrants. Mr. Jackman.
District warrants from January 12th, 2022 to February 10th, 2022, checks number 148893 through 149668, totaling $5,510,684.06 with associated bank transfers. I do have a conflict to declare, number 66753.
Is there a motion to approve? It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Batolo. Discussion. I want to declare a conflict on check 00149,581. Further discussion? All in favor of approving the warrants, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, item number 11, the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion unless members of the board request specific items to be held and discussed separately and/or removed from this section. Minutes. 11A, approval of the minutes from the January 10th, 2022 regular meeting and public hearing. 11B, approval of the minutes from the January 10th, 2022 executive session. 11C, approval of the minutes from the February 2nd, 2022 special board meeting. 11D, approval of the minutes from the February 2nd, 2022 executive session. Finance. 11E, approval of the resolution to amend the 2021-2022 budget. 11F, approval of the purchase of a Pitney Bowes Send Pro P2000 series mail machine. Personnel. 11G, approval of personnel recommendations. Curriculum. 11H, approval to authorize the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Office to purchase 5 Nova Comet 2 bench lathes at the newly quoted price. General Board Business. 11I, approval of the purchase of yearbooks and associated support pieces for Rock Springs High School for 2021-2022. 11J, approval to authorize Head Start to purchase a 2022 Polaris Sportsman 450 HO utility ATV. Technology. 11K, approval of the purchase of 19 Mobile Precision 5560 Dell computers. 11L, approval to authorize the purchase of equipment from Apple Inc. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The addendum. Item number 1, curriculum. Recommendation to authorize the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Department to purchase instructional materials and supplies, including teacher resources, online resources, and student resources not to exceed $270,250 and professional development not to exceed $80,000 for an amount not to exceed $350,250 to pilot Reading Horizons Elevate, a K-12 reading intervention program for North Park Elementary and Stagecoach Elementary, beginning with the 2021-2022 school year. Facilities. Bids were advertised and 3 bids were received by the District Facilities Department for the demolition of Lincoln Elementary School, including asbestos removal. Recommendation to award the bid to Jackman Construction, Inc. in the amount of $428,000 for base demolition and for alternates 1, 2, and 3 in the amounts of $5,000 for removal of in-ground basketball hoops and bollard, $36,000 for asphalt demolition and gravel landscaping, and $7,000 for landscape edging, for a total project bid amount of $476,000 with a 10% contingency of $47,600 for a total of $523,600. This project is to be funded through state capital construction funds.
Hold, please.
Hold on facilities?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and vote on the addendum curriculum, item number 1. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay. Was there a motion? Okay. Is there, let's back up. Is there a motion to approve the addendum, item number 1?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry?
Second.
Second, Mr. Mickelson. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion
Good job,
passes.
Vice Chair.
Okay, item number 2. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Batolo. Okay, Mr. Jackman.
I just have to abstain.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, the motion is to approve item number 2, facilities. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, item number 12, the COVID-19 update.
Chair Jellicoe, members of the board, and our public. On February 7th, we had a COVID update for the last 2 weeks. There was 140 positives and 296 stay-at-home orders or quarantines. Last week, ending in February 11th, we decreased. We had 41 positives and 58 stay-at-home orders and quarantines.
That seemed to be up a little bit from what it had been previously. Is it tapering off or?
This last week was only for 1 week, and that was, like I said, through last week. We normally report out every 2 weeks, so it'll be interesting to see what happens so far this week. As a county, the positivity rate has decreased from about 18% down to, I believe it's 14.1.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Thank you. Item number 13, the board self-evaluation, community relations responsibilities. Anyone want to start? Well, let me read off the categories first. Okay, number 1, the board keeps the public informed through regular newsletters, reports, and contact with the media. Number 2, the board represents public education, serving as a liaison between the school district and the community, and seeks community input prior to establishing district goals and objectives. 3, the board maintains an awareness of community values, concerns, and interests. 4, the board holds public hearings on important issues before taking final action. 5, the board actively participates in programs which build good community relations. 6, the board appoints advisory committees when necessary and outlines their responsibilities. 7, the board determines the district spokesperson or spokespersons who will deal with the news media. And 8, the board channels complaints, concerns about the school district through the appropriate member of the staff or the superintendent. Anyone want to start off? Mr. Mickelson?
Before I get into the rating, what does number 5 mean?
The board actively participates in programs which build good community relations.
Yeah, I think we're mostly 3 and 4. Like this stuff happens and there's a lot of coordination between the board and the superintendent to make sure that those advisory committees and things are occurring and are supported, and the reports are very thorough and consistently yada yada. But when I got to number 5, I can't think of a program that we participated in that builds a good community. Does it mean a practice? Is that how they're using program there, or what? So I was a little lost on that one.
Okay, others feel the same? This is kind of a work in progress. Maybe if some of these, we have difficulty identifying the board's role in it, maybe we need to look at, as we continue to work with this leadership governance program, maybe we need to look at refining some of these rubrics.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman?
when we initially adopted this rubric, I took it as we're not involved in like motorcycle gangs that burn down houses, and we're involved in things like Create a Christmas. I know, Stephanie, you're involved with BOCES, things like that. I think that's more what's it implying, that we're involved with good community organizations outside and programs that help build the community.
Okay,
That's how I interpreted it.
so that's your interpretation.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Mickelson, did you have a score on the overall rubric?
All right, we'll go at 3.5.
3.5, okay. Anyone else? Next, I should say.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Thompson?
I gave us an overall 3.25. The areas I gave us 4s in were number 2, number 4, number 7, and then the others I gave all 3s.
Okay, thank you. Others? Mrs.
Madam
Summers?
Chair.
Mrs. Summers?
I gave us an overall 3.25. And I guess one of the questions I thought of when I was doing this, we've asked the leadership team to rate us as well. And and self-evaluation and evaluation is really important. But then where do we go from there? And I guess my question is, where are we moving? If we're just evaluating ourselves, what are our next steps moving forward using these rubrics? How are we going to utilize them to become better and move our district forward? And if we're just going to evaluate ourselves over and over again and then not use that data to create action, then it's kind of an exercise in futility. So I guess kind of that's my question that's coming up as we do more of these.
So do you have some next steps in mind?
Some of them, I think maybe we need to adjust some of these rubrics because there are some things that it's like, well, this is a yes or no answer. You either do it or you don't. And so it's not really evaluating. And then I think we need to go beyond our score, especially with some like community relations. And I think some of those things that the board is more involved in, and maybe it's time to work as a board to discuss action steps to improve those areas that we're low in. Because, I've seen often we kind of have a consensus about where our trouble spots are. And I think then we need to work together as a board to decide on what our next action steps are, and maybe adding that piece into, so not just the self-evaluation, but then where are we going to go next? And I'm not totally sure about where to go next. I just think we need to start thinking about that, and not just evaluating, but then taking action on that evaluation.
This is our second year now that we've gone through this. And obviously the first year was kind of feeling our way. I think at this point, we're starting to see some of those areas where we tend to agree that we're were effective, and then there's others that we tend to agree that were not as effective. And so maybe one of the things that we need to do is look at, since the document is a work in progress, to take a look at that and maybe, refine it. Obviously, the things that we're having a difficult time identifying, maybe we don't understand. And we either change the language in it so we're clear about what it is, or decide that that's not part of the rubric that we need to continue with. So I'm going to suggest that we look at that, maybe finish out this year as the second year, making note of some of those areas. And then maybe in the fall, we take a look at revising that document and taking into consideration, maybe in a workshop, revising that document and taking into consideration kind of some next steps that we can do in those areas.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see that,
Okay.
working towards a workshop where we can take these evaluations and then create action with them. And I think we also need to look at, some of those areas we're scoring 4s in, it's because you either do it or you don't. And maybe we eliminate some of those so that we can focus better on the areas that we can see some real growth and positive change in.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So that might be some next steps that we can plan on. We'll finish through this year, and then we'll have 2 years of data to look at.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Further comment? Let's see. Mr. Jackman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I put us at a 3.5. Based on the feedback, I tend to actually agree with the feedback that we as a board don't put out the information as much as a board. We don't do letters as a board or anything like that. A lot of it is through the superintendent's office. So that number 1 there is where we could use the most work.
Okay.
As far as adopting, I feel like we are just in the second year of the program, but we've already taken steps to improve our low scores. For example, we knew that financially we didn't really have an active role in deciding where the money goes. So we did the budget workshop and gave direction to admin. We're doing the book study at this point. So
there are some steps that we are taking too. So
yeah,
Okay.
but I do think that the workshop to eliminate some of those problem items
okay,
is helpful.
we'll plan on that in the fall. Okay, Mr. Patolo?
Madam Chair, I rated us at 3.5 also, and I concur with Mr. Jackman that many of these things are things that as a board, it asks if we did this, and really it's not us that does it, so it's either or, so 3.5.
Thank you. Mr. Reedy?
I gave us an overall score of 3.25.
3.25, okay. Any comments?
No, I think it's all.
Okay. And I'm going to go, I'm probably in between a 3.25 and a 3.5. I would say probably in a 3.35, 3.4, somewhere in there. And like I said, I think we're identifying some of the areas that we feel like that we are being effective, and others where we need to do some work. So I think moving into that, we will consider some things that we can do as a board to become more effective. I think that's what we're all interested in, is this growing piece. Okay. 13B, administrative input on the community relations responsibilities. I will note, I believe their average for the category was 3.41. There are some comments that have been attached, but I want to address a couple of things first. First of all, I want to thank all of you on the administrative leadership team that are participating and giving us the feedback. We appreciate that. We're interested in growing as a board, and in terms of experience, we're a young, experienced board, and so we're interested in getting better. And so I want to thank everyone that's taking the time out of their very busy schedules to provide that feedback. At the same time, some of the comments were very revealing. I would say that they were very thought-provoking, as well as some reason for reflection. But they are anonymous comments. And this board has had a practice, a longstanding practice, as a matter of fact, of not reading or acknowledging anonymous comments. So I think I want to clarify our position with regard to those comments in that we will not be reading them aloud. They are attached, they're part of the agenda, but we will not be reading them as we have done in the past. We do not acknowledge or read anonymous comments. We will not be doing that now, nor will we be doing that in the future. So I just want to clarify that because I think there might be some misunderstanding as to how we are using those comments. It's, at least from my perspective, the intention was to use those comments as we do our self-evaluation and apply the information that we've gotten there to how we look at how we're doing our role. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to that. Mr. Mickelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't even remember how long ago it was, but I think everybody is aware that I've been super salty that we have not brought in an independent group to do a climate survey to get feedback, from the community and from our staff and from our parents. And one of the primary objections that was raised to that was that people would use it as an opportunity to, rather than look at procedure and structure and practice, to make comments that are directed to individuals. And I very naively was like, that's ridiculous. Nobody would do that, right? That's not productive. It's not helpful. I'm very aware, and people have directly told me how disappointed they are in various decisions that I've made and how they feel about me. And there are people who feel like I am an absolutely abysmal, terrible embarrassment of a board member. And that's awesome, right? They're paying attention and they have every right to be unhappy with me. But what I'm really hoping we start getting in the feedback from whoever is, hey, we see this as an area where you're short functionally in your process, and this is how we think you could do that better, not Max is a jerk, right? Because I know, like, I can be, it's fine. I'm aware that is a personality flaw that I have to work through. But, as I read last month's and this month's feedback, like, I cannot tell you the number of my favorite time. There was a motion that needed to be made, and it was a very important motion. And I had written it out, and I was super pumped up, and I was ready to make it. And then I got distracted talking to my neighbor because that's who I am. And somebody else had to make the motion, and I was like, wait, is that happening? And I totally lost track of what was going on. These meetings are long and complex, and there's a lot of room for error. And so I would just ask that next month, it would mean a lot if we could get feedback on what we're doing functionally rather than how we are individually as board members. So thank you.
Trustees, anyone else with a comment? Okay, then we'll move on to 14, the book study. Okay, we said we would read the first 2 chapters. What I think at this point, if you'd like to bring up a point or two that maybe struck a chord with you as you read those first couple of chapters, and we'll go from there.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Batolo.
I was reinforced and reminded of the importance of quality time that parents spend with kids, how important that is. And then I was also reminded that, based on the development of the brain, how incredibly important it is to be mindful of that middle school age kid. And I think as a board that we have to continue to see that, because it is a different breed of human at middle school.
Other comments?
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Thompson.
Okay, so I highlighted some stuff because I just can't remember as good, I guess. So one thing that stood out to me was, and I'm just going to read it because it really impacted me. No matter how successful people in emotional poverty may be, their internal understanding is that they are never enough. And that just struck a chord because sometimes you look at somebody or a kid and you're like, man, they got it all together. How do they do that? You have no idea what they're struggling with. So that really hit me. Another one was, and I just highlighted it as well, is whether or not there's a culture of belonging or connection or appreciation. So if someone felt that they was somebody at the school that appreciated them, who cared about them, whether they succeeded or not, they were more likely to have friends and do well in school. So I thought those were important enough to share with everyone else.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Jackman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I enjoyed it. I actually finished the book. My wife issues a challenge that her and I have to read more books in her class or she has to buy them pizza, and I don't want to buy them pizza. So, so I have to maintain the like 4 books a week or something to keep ahead of all the students. No, it was really interesting to see, especially since that's an area we identified to work on as a board. The socioeconomic, the people that aren't from traditional households, an area that we really struggle. I would be interested to see the counterpoint in the book for the conclusions that students just want to be treated like everybody else rather than individualized. And I know there are counterpoints out there. I don't know the author, but it would just be interesting to see the counterpoint.
Okay. Other comments? Mrs.
Madam
Summers?
Chair. I just, it reinforces that connection with, you know, when we talk about learning, and educators will probably groan as I say Maslow's hierarchy, but that idea, it really comes back to that idea of emotional and physical safety, and how kids who don't feel, you know, they're not getting that at different points in their life, they may not be getting those emotional and physical safety pieces, and how that really impacts their behavior, and how behavior is so complex, and the result of their learning is really complex because you combine their learning and their behavior, but a lot of that comes back to, you know, those emotional needs, and some of those that weren't met early on, or some of those that are not met currently. And then as a parent, I don't know, I had some panic moments as I was reading. I'm like, man, I hope I'm not that parent. But you know, that's kind of, so far it's been a pretty good read.
Okay. Other comments? The connection I made was going back to the connectedness that we talked about earlier with the high school students, and making them feel a part of something. And so, at various stages where students, come from various lives. And I think about so many of our working families that maybe the kids don't have as much time with their parents in a nurturing and, just a healthy relationship, that some of these kids have missed those opportunities, and that then as life goes on, they're kind of stuck there. And I think that's a lot of maybe the mental health kinds of things that we're seeing right now, is that we've got kids that are stuck. They may be a chronological age, but they're not an emotional age or a mental age there. And so how do we meet those needs as well? So that's the connecting piece that I had out of the first 2 chapters. So anyone else? Well, I think we decided that we would read a couple of chapters, so we'll go with chapters 3 and 4 for next month. And it has been an interesting read. So, okay, good of the order, number 15. Anyone? Well, I've got a list. Legislative session started today. So, and it will go for, I think it goes to March 4th. So if School Boards Association is hosting a legislative forum next Sunday, starts at 2 o'clock, and then the reception is at 4 o'clock at Little America, if anyone is still interested. I do plan on attending. And I just wanted to touch bases too, because Superintendent McGovern and Mrs. Bolton and Mr. Duncan and I attended a legislative group in Green River on Wednesday. And, it was interesting talking with it. Actually, there was a pretty good turnout. We had Representative Paxton from Encampment, Senator Baldwin from Kemmer, Representative Heiner also from Kemmer, Representative Stith from here in Rock Springs, Senator Kolb from here in Rock Springs. I think that was it, wasn't it? So it was interesting. One senator seemed to be taking a little bit of offense. I'd say he was on the defense, let's put it that way, about some comments that the Senate dislikes education. And he was a little defensive about that. He agreed that there might be a couple of people that feel that way, but the Senate in general doesn't hate education. Actions sometimes speak louder than words. So, but it was an opportunity to touch bases with them. I would encourage you, if they're your representative or they're your senator or whoever those represent, try to stay in touch with them and keep in mind what's going on in the legislature, because it may not be quite as much of a funding issue this year, but they have the perception that we've got all this federal money and that we've just got all this stuff to do, and they're not real interested in continuing to fund education at the levels that it has been, and that's a problem. So, okay, and then tomorrow, February 15th is National SRO Day. So I want to thank all the SROs in the district and thank you for your service and wish you a happy day tomorrow. Okay, new business, 16A, the vacancy notice as of February 7th, 2022. You'll notice that you received an updated version of that. All the positions that were vacant from last year and stuff have been added on, so this is a complete list. 16B is the calendar for the months of February, March, April, and May. So you'll notice the graduation dates are on there, so please mark those on your calendar. 16C, January 2022, Head Start Governing Board and Policy Council monthly report is also there. Okay, item number 17 is an executive session for discussion of legal and personnel matters. Is there a motion to go into executive session? It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Mickelson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, we are in an executive session for the discussion of legal and personnel matters. There may be action upon our return. Is there a motion to return to the general meeting?
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, we are back in the general meeting. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Jackman, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nicholson. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
Would anyone like chocolate?